This podcast is sponsored by the Audio and Music courses at BNU, celebrating over 25 years of music education and innovation.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of our podcast series where I'm joined today by a man who needs no introduction. The university's very own Vice Chancellor Nick Braisby joins me today to discuss Pride Month. In the UK, Pride Month is celebrated in June and is focused on acceptance, equality, celebrating the work of LGBTQ+ communities, education in history and raising awareness of issues affecting the LGBTQ+ communities. So Nick, thank you for joining me today. So we're just going to kick off with our first question. So why did you feel it was important to join us on this podcast to talk about Pride Month and your personal experience as an openly gay man and Vice Chancellor at BNU?
Well, for me, Pride is an enormously important event. I remember participating in Pride marches now decades ago at a time when gay rights, for me human rights, were under threat. And people have struggled for generations trying to establish those rights. We see increasingly in the world how easy it is for things to go backwards at times. And so I'm reminded, and I think Pride helps us all to remember, that these rights need to be fought for still, otherwise they can disappear. So Pride is enormously important for me. Personally, I've got great memories of Pride marches and Pride events in the past, but it's always that issue about reminding everyone, rights can go. They're not God-given. Governments can come, governments can go, they can change the political landscape. We all need to stand up and make sure that these rights stay.
Yeah. So at what age did you come out as gay and how did your loved ones react at the time?
So I came out when I was, I think, about 24.
Okay.
So quite a long time ago now. For me, the turmoil for me personally was internal. It took a long time for me personally to accept being gay. But once I did, everything else fell into place.
Okay.
And I went from someone who was, I had lots of great things going on in my life, but ultimately challenged by the turmoil I felt. And that went almost overnight for me.
Okay.
And the reactions I had from my mum and dad in particular they were quite upsetting. I think my mum and dad were upset, but not really because they had any sort of anti-gay sentiment. In their minds, they'd built up a picture of what my life might be, and suddenly they realised that wasn't going to happen. So I suppose they kind of mourned that loss, but quite quickly came to understand, well, I was still the same person, I was going to have a fantastic life, and they could celebrate and take part in that. Ultimately, a very, very good response.
Good. So what does Pride Month mean to you? I know we touched on this briefly earlier, but what personally does Pride Month mean to you?
Well, it is that thing about rights, but one of the things I remember most about Pride marches and Pride celebrations is just how diverse the community is. And it brings people together from all walks of life, all backgrounds, social class is as spread as it possibly could be, ethnicity spread as possibly, gender, everything. And it's a wonderfully, if it's done right, it's a wonderfully vibrant moment where you kind of celebrate being a part of humanity, and you are recognised and celebrated for who you are, not for what people would like you to be.
Yeah.
So it's a very liberating moment, I think, Pride.
Yeah, because I studied at University of Brighton and my graduation day was actually the weekend of Pride.
Oh.
So I've never experienced it before and I went along and it was just a really good community feel and a good atmosphere, and Brighton's obviously a great place for it. That's brilliant, so I really enjoyed it. So do you have any advice to others who want to come out?
Well, I think it's always a personal decision. I don't think there's any kind of rules about it, actually. And I remember when I came out, there was quite a lot of pressure within some activist communities to ensure that people came out, and I never felt that was right. So I would say to people, just take your time, do it in your own pace and your own way. But my own personal experience is my happiness levels changed dramatically when I came out. I could suddenly be myself, be open. One or two negative reactions generally, very few. But I was able to put those in the place where they deserve to belong. I recognised there were one or two acquaintances who were just that, they weren't friends. So one or two negative reactions from people who I recognised weren't really friends, they were just acquaintances. The vast majority reacts incredibly positive, and that affirmation is something that a lot of people have in their lives, but as a gay man I didn't feel I had. So I would say to people, yes, of course, plan it, think about it, but don't underestimate the value it will bring to you by coming out.
Yeah. So are you personally involved in any celebrations this month? Like, are you attending any pride marches, or do you not do?
I haven't got anything planned at this moment, although I'm hoping to get across to Amsterdam at some point, so I might, if the timing works, participate there.
Great. Just going to link to your role now as Vice Chancellor. So how does it feel to be only one of a few openly gay Vice Chancellors?
Well, I think I'm remarkably lucky and remarkably privileged to be in the position I am in. I find it a slightly complex juxtaposition to navigate, actually, because whilst I don't particularly want to use my Vice Chancellor position to sort of dramatically wave flags about sexuality, nonetheless I hope that people recognise that it is possible to be very open and be in a privileged position. So I hope that through my example, whatever it is, that people can see, oh, look, he's out as a gay man. If it works for him, it can work for me. Beyond that, I do believe the sector generally has got a good position on support for LGBTQ plus communities. However, we know that the challenges, particularly around mental health, can be quite stark. And so I do hope that, again, through that example, we can shine a light on the continuing challenges that some of our community face. Okay,
great. So have you had to face any struggles due to your sexuality, and if so, how has that impacted you today?
I think if I have, I'm blind to them. I haven't noticed them, I haven't seen I've no doubt there are cases of discrimination or whatever, but my focus has always been on work on the positives, and if that's happening and people have a negative view, well, leave them to it.
Okay. So do you feel that talking about your sexuality in circumstances like this can help contribute to a more inclusive university community and society generally?
Absolutely, and I really hope it does. But I just hope that there are if there are people in our community who may be still struggling with their sexual orientation or being open about it, I just hope they feel there are other people who have been through the same position. They know what it's like. That we've all faced those same troubles and challenges. There is bright light at the end of the tunnel. So don't suffer. Don't feel in too much pain. Reach out to people you feel may be supportive and might understand, but recognise that if you come out, if you don't come out, there is support there for you.
Absolutely. So I know you mentioned that you came out as gay at age 24, but do you think society today is generally more aware and accepting the differences?
Well, in some ways, yes. And I think there have been remarkable changes in my lifetime, changes I thought would never happen. Equalised age of consent, gay marriage, extraordinary changes. But in some ways, I still find there's an intolerance, and maybe it's become more marginalised. But I really worry about some of the reaction towards the trans community, and how some of the narrative that was mobilised in the 70s, 80s against the gay community is now often mobilised against the trans community and others. And I think in that sense, people haven't learned the lesson of gay liberation, or whatever you want to call it, which is people can be themselves, and they need support to be themselves, and they have a right to be themselves, and that's what society needs to enshrine. So I still think there are challenges.
Okay. We spoke about challenges there, but do you have any ideas on how these challenges can be overcome? Is it about talking, being open about these things, or is there anything else you'd suggest?
I think generally awareness. One of the lessons of the gay rights movement, I think, has been how many people now in society think, well, what was the issue? And they've arrived at that position through awareness, education, images, role models, all of these things have helped people to recognise that all the scare stories or the strange stories people may have heard, it's not true. And I think probably the best way to tackle some of those issues is by continuing to talk about it, being open and raising awareness. Of course, there may be other issues in Parliament, there may be laws that need challenging and so on, and that needs to happen, but that will happen much more easily if everyone is aware.
And educated.
Yeah.
So has being a part of the LGBTQ plus community impacted upon your role as Vice Chancellor?
I think it has. I think all the way through my career, I think my sexuality has, because I haven't had particularly adverse reactions, but I have felt a member of a minority. And I think there are certain social situations which can be awkward. There's still people often turn around to me and say, what does your wife do? And, it's in that moment, it can be awkward to kind of say, well, actually, I have a husband, not a wife. But what I think has been helpful for me is to draw on some of those experiences to understand how others might feel. It might be about race, it might be about age, disability, what it's like to be a member of a minority where the majority assumes you will be different. And I think that just helps to have a level of empathy with others and the situations they may be experiencing. And I do try as much as possible in the work as the VC, just to reflect on those personal human stories. The moment you're operating in policy and you forget this is about people, the moment then you're in trouble. So it helps me remember that we are talking about people and their stories.
Brilliant. Okay. So from your perspective, does BNU have an inclusive and diverse student and staff community?
We have a diverse student community. I think we do have a belief in inclusivity, but inclusivity can always be better. And it's always slightly worried me that we've not had a more active LGBTQ plus society here at times. And I'm hoping that will change. But it may not be an indicator of anything. But there's always the worry that, are we as inclusive as we want to be? I think the only way that can really happen is if we all keep talking about it and making clear that that's what we're aiming for. So anyone can come to BNU and be themselves.
Good. Yeah, there's never going to be a point where we say, right, we've reached inclusivity now, we just give up give it up now and stop. So we just keep going, keep educating people. Yeah. So the final question for today is, what would you say to anyone who's listening to this and is unsure whether they will feel included and accepted into the BNU community because of their sexual orientation?
You are welcome in the community, fully and absolutely. We are an equal community, and don't give that a second thought. But what you can do, if you come to BNU, is you can participate in making it even more inclusive and making us learn from your example so that we can be better for the future.
Brilliant. So that's all we've got time for today, but thank you for sharing your experiences with us as part of this Pride Month podcast. If you've enjoyed tuning in today, you can explore more of Let's Talk BNU on our YouTube and Spotify channel, as well as our website, bucks.ac.uk/podcast. That's all for now, and see you all next time.